Good evening, everybody. We're going to get started. Thank you so much for coming. We're going to call the meeting to order, and then on the table, you're going to find that we have copies of our minutes from our February meeting. If you just give it a quick look, we'd like to approve those minutes. If no one has an objection, we'd like to approve the minutes. Do I hear a motion? A second? Great, thank you. Our minutes are approved. And at this time, we'd like to invite our treasurer, Ken Ho, to give his report.
Hi, good evening, everyone, and I'll try to be as quick as I can. You can see from the slide, I guess that it's pretty self-explanatory. I'll just go over the items with you. For the month of February, we increased revenue by $29,000, and you see the breakdown from there. And we got $8,000 from annual fuel and intermediate respectively each, plus over $11,000 from our sponsors. Excuse me. And for those of you who do not know, we recently set up a CD account, and that gave us a 3-month interest income of $1,500. The next CD is going to mature in May, so we expect to see another similar amount. The Fed held the interest rate steady, so we don't expect a lot of fluctuation from the interest amount. It's better than what we used to generate from the savings. Having said that, that brings our total revenues to slightly below $2,800, and that translates into 74% of our annual fundraising target. So moving to the right-hand side with the red bars, February was a big spending month for the PA, totaling almost $67,000. And the key items are fundraising expenses for the new year and the deposit for the upcoming gala. We also sponsored a couple of diversity initiatives, such as the culture fair and the Black Student Union Assembly for celebration of Black History Month. The rest of the spending on miscellaneous items, such as the remaining spending that we have for teachers' wish list, as well as miscellaneous spending for supplies. That brings our total net income year to date to $68,000, and our cash reserve is at $470,000 in the bank. That's my report. Any questions, comments? Okay, great. Thank you. I'll bring it back to the ladies, Tiffany and Kim, please.
Thank you, Ken. And now we're going to ask our fundraising committee to give an update. Leslie is going to do that for us, and here's Leslie.
Thank you. Hi guys, thank you so much for coming out tonight. So if the first thing I want you guys to look at on the table, you guys should have some flyers there for our annual gala. They have convenient QR codes, so you guys can scan, purchase your tickets. We also have on the table our donation. So we are currently looking for donations for the gala. If you know anyone that has a company, or if you have a vacation home that you would like to donate, we're looking for big ticket items, even small ticket items. So you can scan as well. And we do have our brand new merch that is available for anyone that would like to pick up and purchase. It will be available online moving forward, so you may not get the same price. You'll have to pay for shipping, so take advantage of what's here today available. That's really it for us. We did have an open house yesterday. We don't have the full numbers yet, but I believe it was very successful for our open house.
Last night?
Yes.
So we took in, I took the train last night home with $16,000 of cash. That money was deposited earlier today in the bank. So, and we also received $6,000 from our Pentecost sale. So in total, $22,000 from last night. Thank you.
Great job, guys. And that's in the course of like 3 hours or 4 hours. So, you know, know when we all come together in that teamwork, we can make amazing things happen. Please, please, please join the gala so we can hit some big numbers again. Thank you.
Thank you, Leslie. Next, we would like to invite Principal Newman up for a Q&A. If anybody has any questions, please just raise your hand and we'll come around
Good evening, everyone. Just a couple of things off my top of my head, and just to make sure everybody knows, graduation, the date has been moved. It was initially, well, you might not even know what the initial date is, so I don't need to go into that. But graduation this year is going to be on June 20th at 9:30 in the morning. 9:30 ceremony begins. Your kids will likely, probably, I don't know, you'll get information from Miss Massey, they'll probably have to be there at 8:30. But the ceremony will begin at 9:30, of course, at the wonderful Barclays Center. So June 20th, it's a Friday, 9:30, and that's that. And then afterwards, they don't have to come to school afterwards. None of that, but they'll come back on obviously the last day to pick up their diploma. Okay, I don't know if I have to mention anything else around that. What was it? The 23rd? The 23rd, 24th, and 25th is a diploma. Okay, there you go. Okay, hot off the press. All right. Yeah.
The AP bills are due next Friday.
The AP bills are what?
Due next Friday.
Okay, apparently the AP bills are due next Friday. I'm just getting messages from all sorts of people. So I don't even know that. So okay. Any questions? Any questions?
Everyone should come to the musical.
What was it?
Everyone should come to the musical.
Yes, come to the musical. And yeah, there is also a Saturday date as well if you want to bring younger siblings and whatnot. That's great. Probably on a Saturday I'll bring my own children, so I'll see you there. Questions? I thought I just had some.
Yes, I do.
Yeah, what do you got?
For the AP bill, we received a few parents from BTech group. They talk about in February when they received the bill,
Yeah.
it shows zero due. And in March when they received the reminder, it shows you are owing money. But
Yeah.
when they click into the portal, there's zero. So they're confused.
I'm confused as well. I don't have an answer for you. I don't do the AP bills, but so if you could send an email my way or through, and I'll send it to testing, and we'll find
Actually,
out.
they contact the test
Yeah.
office and say, because the change in your lunch form. But for this family, there's no change in the lunch form. No income, not
So you
change
mean
in
they
income.
didn't have?
They
thought,
said zero due in February bill,
Oh.
and in the reminder in March they said you owe maybe $200, $300.
Oh, that sounds like a big
So,
change.
and then when they click
Have
into
them send
the-
it to me.
Okay,
I'll
thank
look
you.
into it. No problem.
Thank
The
you.
actual portal says zero though.
Yes.
So they're fine, they got the
No, they told
But
they
then they sent
replied
the
to
bill
one of the
afterwards.
parents to pay in SGO instead of the portal. So that's confused. That's from testing.
Okay, send it to me. This sounds like a very specific
Yes.
case. Send it to me. I'll figure it out.
We heard about 2 cases.
Okay, all right.
Thank you.
So if you send it to me, if both cases, I'll get to the
All right, thank you.
nitty gritty of each one. Yeah.
I just wanted to clarify, you mentioned the graduation is June 20th, 9:30 is the ceremony. The
Yeah.
seniors report there at 8:30?
Probably, you will get an email, you will get probably a whole bunch of emails from Miss Massey that will give you unbelievable detailed things. So I don't want to talk on her behalf. I know it starts at 9:30. I would assume probably kids have to be there. If she says 8:15 and she says 8:08, you will be there when she says you'll be there. And so she will let you know exactly when you need to be there. But the ceremony does begin at 9:30.
It'll be before 8:30 because they have to check in at 1600.
Yes, maybe that. So, but you'll get all the information. So I'm just giving you hot off the press. It's at 9:30. I think it was advertised earlier that it's in the morning. So it is at 9:30. Ceremony begins. Questions? Oh yeah. All right. All night for me. Okay. Ken, you saying goodbye or you have a question?
Just saying hi.
All right. How are you? Always nice to see you, Ken. Okay. Going.
All right.
Oh, all right. What do you got?
How long is the graduation taking? How much coffee do I have to drink?
The graduation is supposed to take 3 hours. it will take 3 hours. It might take a little longer. I think last year we went a half an hour over. You will need a lot of coffee. And so the ceremony itself is really only like an hour of things and events going on. It takes a while to the kids to all get in their seats. Sometimes it takes up to a half an hour for all the kids to get in and sit down. And then it takes about an hour and a half for all the kids to have their names read and for them to shake my hand. And so that's sort of the bulk of it. Kids coming in, kids shaking hands, like that's the big thing. And so, but it will definitely be 3 hours. And so, if not more. So, yeah, plan your coffee breaks at, certain times or whatever. You're gonna need more than 1 cup. Yeah.
So how does your hand feel as an
I'm driving you nuts walking around. Sorry, it's my ADHD. It's not the hand. It's not the hand. It's the cheeks. Congratulations. It's always the cheeks. I get a little excited for each kid. It's always the cheeks. The hands, just whatever. That's fine, but it doesn't hurt. Most kids don't try to, and encourage your kids not to try to like wrestle with me and whatever. Like very few kids come on and try like strong arm me or whatever. So it's usually not that. But yeah, the cheeks are usually it. But I'm overly happy on that day, so it's well worth it. Oh, okay, yeah.
May I ask non-graduation related?
Sure. You can ask any question you want.
Yeah, I have 2 questions. One is my daughter is a freshman and she still does not know who is her counselor. What's the process of finding?
So you're at the very beginning of the year, your daughter got a introductory email. Hi, my name is David Newman. I'm your counselor, right? And so
But that email was probably a long time ago. So
yeah. That was at the beginning of the year. You can always go up to the counselor suites and find your counselor. Your kid knows their prefect. That's also attached to a counselor. There's many ways to find out your counselor. They could go up to Assistant Principal Christoph over there, and he will surely let you know who your counselor is. But that's not hard. Yeah.
Second question has to do with this absence form. So I think absence form can be enhanced to serve both students being absent for that day, as well as students who are partially absent. Because currently, student has to take the whole day off, even if he or she only has doctor's appointment, let's say for 1 hour in the morning, right? So student, let's say, hypothetically, my daughter has an appointment at 9 a.m. and finish at 10. She couldn't come to school because that she will be marked as late, regardless of the absent form. So she has to take the whole day off and miss all the important class, right, for the rest of the day. Well, she could have used the absent form to report both instead of being absent, but being late, so that she would not be marked or penalized for being late because she submitted the absent form. So I would strongly recommend that, if we can use the absent form to also, for the purpose of students, being reported.
The issue here, I don't think it's the absent form itself. You can use the absent form for a partial absence. What you can't do, she can't leave the building. Your daughter can't leave.
Yeah, no, she's not leaving the building. She goes to the doctor's appointment.
Oh, early.
Yeah. Right? And finish at 10, she could not come to school anymore.
He's under the impression that she can't come.
Oh, she can come to school.
But then she will be marked late without, an absent form is not going to cover it.
No. An absence form will absolutely cover it. So she has a note from, let's say you, that says she had a doctor's appointment, she will return to school at 11 a.m. in the morning, right? Now, she did miss the earlier classes. She missed them. She's not going to be marked present. She wasn't there. And if she comes in the middle of a class, she is going to be marked late to that class. She was late to the class. But the teacher, all the ones of classes that she missed, and the one that came in late, see your note. and they know there's a reason for it. So then it's an explained absence and an explained late. You get it?
Does that require the same absence form? Or
Yeah, that's fine. Use that form. But it should have some narrative from you that says it was a doctor's note under my permission. Yeah,
Oh,
absolutely.
clarification.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
Then on a related question,
Yeah.
right, let's say she has an appointment in the afternoon, she has to leave school early. That, I think,
Not leaving school early.
that, so, okay.
You could come get her, but she's not walking out of the building early. I mean, she's 14 years old. I'm not letting her walk out in the middle of the day. She's under my supervision. If you come pick her up, if somebody else picks her up, anybody on a blue card picks her up, that's fine. But once you're here, you can't just walk out.
But does that require absence form if she needs to leave early?
Yeah, you would do the same thing, right? You're telling the teachers, yes, my daughter missed her class, period 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I was there in the morning, that doesn't matter. And I'm giving you the respect to tell you that she would have loved to be in your class, but this is the reason she wasn't. She had a doctor's appointment, and then they accept that, and it's an explained absence, and that's it. No
Okay,
problem.
so absence form will do it.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
thank you for that.
Okay, no problem. Also, yeah,
No, on that topic,
that's one.
sorry. So for explaining absences, so for example, one of my son's teachers asked me to present the college application process to her English class.
Okay.
So he was a science class, so he was marked absent. So does that always stay on his record that he's marked absent?
If you're not in class, for whatever reason, you're absent, right? You're not there, right? As a legal record, if somebody asked, I can't say you were in that class. You were somewhere else. Maybe you're in my office talking to me, whatever it is. Maybe you were talking to your guidance counselor. Then you have a note for that, right? The student talks to me, I give a note to the teacher. Yes, they were absent from your class. This is the reason why. That's what stays on record. Yeah, you weren't there, right? So it's different than you cutting a class or whatever, but the point is you were still absent. We can't mark you present in the class that you didn't attend. It's no ding on your record, it's no big deal, but we're just for record purposes, we know you weren't in that class. And so you were somewhere else. You have a note from a guidance counselor, you have a note from a social worker, you have a note from me, whatever it is, that this is the reason why. And so the note for me is a very important thing when you miss class or miss the whole day. It's literally like I said before, I wanted to be there. Out of respect to you in this course, this is why I wasn't there, right? And so I think that goes a long way with teachers. They want to know why you weren't there, right? And so,
But if the teacher had advance notice, they still mark you absent.
yep, you're not there, right? Yep, yep, yeah. Yeah. Wait, so they didn't get, so she didn't get the questions right and she wrote it as missing? Wait, so the kid did the assignment, they didn't do it well, and they mark it as not, that shouldn't be.
Jupiter's inconsistent. Teachers use it inconsistent.
It's a little wonky though, but if you think about this, right? You have an assignment and you get a 20, right? That does something to your average. If it's blank, it does nothing to your average. So if it's missing, but they don't fill it in with a number, it actually doesn't help nor hurt you. So maybe, I'm just speculating what's happening, the teacher has decided not to count that assignment for your kid. If there's not a number in there, it is not averaged in. You got me? Yeah? Now, there might be more to the story. Your kid might have a lot of missing assignments, right? And so I think you need to get to the bottom of that. But if I see a lot of missing assignments in my kid's Jupiter, I would surely reach out to the teacher and see what's going on. Yeah, so, you might be getting half a story from your kid. So, you want to get the whole story. So, yeah. And so,
There are a lot of missing assignments stories. So my son was saying that he got full scored on the exam, and the teacher gave the class to correct their answer for those incorrect.
Yeah.
So since he got everything right, so he did not do anything to it.
Okay.
And then he got a missing assignment.
The test, yeah, you just need to reach out. He just needs to talk to the teacher and fix that up, right? but that might be also that it doesn't help or hurt the kid and they just leave it blank.
Yeah, he just like left it.
Then that makes sense, right? They didn't submit anything, so it's not gonna help or hurt, it just doesn't get averaged
Oh,
out.
no, he got a missing assignment, which their percentage should be off.
Got it. He needs to just talk to the teacher and clear it up.
It was last year, so he did not care that I
Should care, it's still getting the gong over there, yeah.
When will they hear if they get the electives that they
Oh,
picked?
we send those out, I have a date in my mind. It's like, what, do you know what date it is? You don't know what date it is. But when they're gonna find out when they got their elective, so. Yeah, so we'll make the decision by the 24th and we'll make sure all our T's are crossed and I's dotted, and then probably the next week. The 24th is Monday or Friday? Okay, all right, that week, the week of the 24th. I don't know what day. No. Yeah,
that's Monday.
Yeah. Oh, that's this Monday? Well, time flies, we have fun. I would expect by the end of next week. I have the date written down somewhere, but yeah. And so we're still, going through and processing all that. Yep.
Back to the graduation.
Like a half an hour ago, no one had any questions. I was about to walk out.
Because the parents have
You
no
were.
graduation, so I
Well,
had to go
this is
first.
my startup.
Yeah, so we know about 4 tickets per student,
Yeah.
I would say. And one parent said, I do have 1-year-old baby. We cannot leave her alone. So
Yeah.
can we
The baby
carry
doesn't
her?
need a ticket.
Oh, so it's okay to carry it, so
Yeah,
it doesn't count.
Yeah,
But
babies don't count.
Sit on the lap, right?
Yeah, I mean, you have to ask
Okay.
more questions, but I don't think babies count.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Good to
Yeah,
know.
I mean, airline rules.
Okay.
Okay, anything else? Yeah.
Do you usually do recording of graduation?
Yeah. We do recording graduation, and it goes up on like a YouTube channel or something. Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
All right, short up. No more. Going. Go. Everybody have a great day.
Everybody, really, it's okay if you want to get up. We've got a lot of food left. If you want to grab something, you're not going to disturb us. And Mr. K, we'd like you to come up and do introductions for us.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening. All right, let's see. Okay, so my name is Jean-Christophe Louis Bolzano, also known as Mr. K. That's how the kids know me by. I am the Assistant Principal of People and Personnel Services, also known as the Assistant Principal of Guidance here at BTech. I oversee the school counselors and the social workers, and my department deals with the academic portion and the mental health of our students. So today we're going to focus on the mental health aspect. And we deal with various forms of mental health concerns amongst our students. And I want to take the time to come here and partner with you on how to make that narrative consistent between our school and your home as much as possible. Your kids are our primary concern, and we want to get them the best help as possible. So first, we will have Jeffrey M. Galea from the New York Center for Living, who will discuss the helpful strategies and approaches for parents to address substance abuse and related issues with students. And then we'll follow with Dr. Zoe Phillips, who will discuss strategies and approaches for supporting teens who are struggling to attend school. After the presentation, I will show you a spreadsheet that lists all the resources we have vetted for your kids and your family. I will share that spreadsheet with Mary Yoon, and it is a living document and updates with each resource that we receive. So, please help me introduce Mr. Galea, please.
Great. Good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for having me. Really appreciate it. I'm here with my colleague Lisa Ayapica. We're here from the New York Center for Living. My name is Jeffrey Galea. I'm a licensed clinical social worker. I'm a therapist, and I'm also the Director of Business Development at the New York Center for Living. I like to think of myself as the chief evangelist of our program. I love sharing the good news of the work we do. We provide clinical services in supporting young people and their families. We also do a lot of education, and that's really why I'm here, to spread the word and to raise people's consciousness. Can everyone hear me okay? Okay, I can't hear myself. The New York Center for Living, we're an outpatient program. We work with adolescents, young adults, young professionals, and their families who are experiencing substance use disorders and co-occurring mental health issues. For a young person to be treated at our center, they do need to have a primary substance use disorder. We also can support parents and other significant others who are caring for and supporting people who have substance use issues as well. I'm actually going to take a cue from the principal. I'm going to hold up the mic. We encourage abstinence from all substances. While we do utilize harm reduction strategies, we really are about, especially for our youngest clients, giving them a period of sobriety and abstinence so that one, we can address any substance use disorders and addiction, but also because young people ought not be using substances in these very, very important adolescent years. So really focus on helping young people build skills and parents to build skills to help young people remain sober so they can grow and ultimately thrive. Also, we recognize that substance use disorders are a family issue. They do not exist in a vacuum. You'll probably hear me say that phrase over and over again. It doesn't exist in a vacuum. Kids are responding to issues out there that they're dealing with, and a lot of those issues happen in the home. So we really are looking to help parents both identify those issues and also create a recovery environment for young people. And that includes sometimes making changes to your parenting style. That's going to be a big part of what we're going to focus on tonight. Very briefly, at the New York Center for Living, we have a suite of services we provide. This includes psychiatric evaluation and biopsychosocial assessments. Social workers love inventing words, so the biopsychosocial assessment is one of our contributions to the lexicon. Thank you. Or you're welcome. Individual psychotherapy is an important aspect of what we do. We also provide group therapy and family therapy. We do psychiatry and medications for addiction treatment as well as psychotropic medications. Because while we do treat substance use disorders, we also recognize that there's co-occurring mental health issues that are often being addressed through substance use. When we take away the substance, a lot of those symptoms emerge. And so we have to also medicate and treat those, both with therapy and with medication. We use urine drug screening, which is an objective measure that helps us understand if someone is maintaining sobriety, and we can send it to a lab for confirmatory testing. Also, peer services. We employ and connect folks with young people and older people who are living lives of recovery, right? So I'm a therapist, right? And while I like to think I'm credible, I think my credibility goes away the more hair I lose. So I do try to remain current, but if I can introduce a young person to another young person who's actually living a life of recovery, it's powerful. It really complements the work we do. And then collaboration with outside providers, like folks on Mr. K's team, right? We value the relationships we build with outside providers, including schools, and we really feel that, kids spend a lot of time in school. This is their social environment along with the home. So we really are trying to partner with folks who have the information and the relationships, so we're all rowing in the same direction. Here's our agenda. We're going to talk about substance use disorders. We're going to talk about parenting and parenting styles, because people think, oh, you're just going to help me talk to my kid about drugs. And to some extent, yeah. But actually what we're going to talk about is the relationship. That's really important, and the style of relationship that we bring. Now, I'm a therapist, I'm also a dad myself, and while my daughter is very young, a lot of the same principles remain, right? Little kid, little problems, big kid, big problems, but a lot of the same themes. So we're really going to focus on that, both from that therapeutic perspective and from that relational perspective. Effective co-parenting, this one's a big one. It's going to be very important, whether parents are together or separated or divorced, or there is a complicated family system. We're going to focus on that as well. Emotional safety, very important. Effective communication, it's a big part of what we do. Everything we do is communication, whether it's verbal or nonverbal. Practical tips for discussing substance use disorders. That's where you're going to get some tips that you can utilize, tools for your toolbox. And then finally, people, places, and things, which is a phrase that we take from the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous, but we're going to apply to how we can best understand the young people who live in our homes. Sometimes we understand them, sometimes we don't, but understanding the key aspects of them is really important. All right, so substance use disorders, and I just want to briefly touch on the diagnostic criteria, right? The DSM really sets the tone in terms of how we understand diagnoses. We know people are more than diagnoses, right? If I break my arm, I get a diagnosis, it's a broken arm. Doesn't mean I'm a broken arm. It's same for substance use disorders. People have substance use disorders, they aren't substance use disorders themselves. So the four main criteria are really important. So one is impaired control over use. So larger and larger amounts, right, for longer periods, unsuccessful reduction. A lot of people try quitting on their own. Some people do. Oftentimes they need support. Social impairment, so inability to fulfill roles. Now for adults, we think of jobs, we think of families. For young people, it's school, it's also athletics. It's the way in which young people might stop being interested in things they were interested in. You can see that change from middle school to high school. Now, some of that is natural, but some of that is indicative of an issue. It could be substance use, it could be mental health. Either way, we want to get curious and we want to try to understand as best we can. And it starts very much with parents. Even if the bell is ringing from a school counselor or a social worker, at the end of the day, the parents are really there to try to understand as best they can what's going on with the kid. They know them better than we do. Risky use, right? So unsafe environments, right? Are kids using them in dangerous ways and in dangerous places with dangerous people? That is a very, very important aspect of the diagnosis. And then finally, there's a pharmacological reason, which is increased tolerance in the presence of withdrawal. Now, a lot of young people may not exhibit full addiction, that kind of physiological addiction. And that being said, they can experience withdrawal from substances. Sometimes that's physical, sometimes that's psychological. Often it doesn't matter because we have to help them to cope and manage through that if they're going to enter a period of sobriety. So these are the 4 elements we really look for. So some recent statistics, and this is good news, and this is where I'm actually going to read directly because some of this is fairly new. So the recent data from the MCF survey, which is Monitoring for the Future, shows adolescent substance use has remained below pre-pandemic levels. So this is really good from the substance use piece, but it also, I think, masks some other more difficult news, which is that the social dislocation that young people are facing and the culture of isolation is decreasing substance use, but it's increasing a lot of other mental health challenges, like depression and anxiety. That being said, we definitely want to keep those substance use statistics as low as possible. So 8th graders, 11% reported using any illicit drug during the past year, with cannabis use at 8%. So cannabis use predominates in that age group. 10th graders, it starts to increase. 20% reported illicit drug use. And again, that indicator of cannabis, yes, you have a question?
Is alcohol included in illicit drug?
Yes. Thanks for that question. 12th graders, 31% of high school seniors reported illicit drug use, but 29% using cannabis. And additionally, cannabis and vaping was reported at 6.5% for 8th graders, and then it increases to 13% and to 20%. What we see is these delivery systems get more insidious, right? When I was growing up, you knew people were smoking weed because you could smell it, right? Now with carts, like oil carts and edibles, well, we can often see the effects we can't often notice right away. And they can be masked and they can really hide it. So it's really important to get a good read on a young person and their habits. All right, so now we're going to get into parenting and parenting styles. Our effectiveness as parents in discussing issues like substance use is predicated on the quality of our relationships. And that's really important, and it bears repeating, the quality of relationships. The first question to ask yourself as a parent before engaging the conversation is, how is my relationship with my child? You can't have a hard conversation with a kid if you're not attuned to the relationship. And if there's tension and challenges in there, they're going to reject and resist those conversations. So you have to attend to that. Now, easier said than done, right? You have a guy come up here saying, fix your relationship with your kid, right? But that's where I think it is important just to start to build your own capacity to do that. And sometimes to gain support and resources from people like me, from people like Dr. Phillips back there. So young people will resist hard discussions when they don't feel safe, aligned, and validated by parents. I'm going to use this phrase over and over again. You can validate what's valid and not co-sign the behavior, right? A kid can respond and react and reject all they want, and you can say, yeah, I get it. If I was you, I would be mad too. And you still can't do that thing, right? We can validate the feeling and not co-sign the behavior. I'm going to say it over and over again. It's like the hashtag tonight. Children, including young adults, need to be appropriately centered in the lives of their parents, and this is also key, right? This means sometimes putting your phone down. It means eating dinner together. It means sometimes not taking that work call. It means sometimes attending to the relationship. And I get it, it's New York City, it's tough, it's expensive. We all worry about our jobs, we worry about our livelihoods, we worry about the other relationships we have. It can be really difficult sometimes to pull ourselves away. We have to find the capacity to do so, utilizing our own coping skills and our own understanding of how important a relationship is. There's 3 parenting styles that I really want to discuss tonight. And obviously, just to kind of, set the record straight here, we want to really focus on the authoritative parenting style. Sometimes people call it gentle parenting, and I like that, but I think authoritative, speaks to the idea that we want high warmth, but we also want high accountability in our relationships. So, authoritarian is those strict rules, the high demands, the little flexibility. So parents expect obedience without question, and often use punishment to enforce control. So emotional warmth and nurturing in these relationships are very limited. Often rules and punishments are arbitrary and unpredictable. You might think that an authoritarian would really stick to the rules all the time. It isn't like that. It can feel very arbitrary. You never know what you're walking into. Now, permissive parenting, and listen, I think for the most part when I talk to parents, they tend to worry more about this, right? High warmth and low control. Parents can be indulgent with few rules or boundaries, and they prioritize their children's desires over structure and discipline. Often parents cannot cope with the emotional responses to their children's reactions and give in order to keep the peace. I see this all the time. I have a 5-year-old, she gets out of school, she says, I want candy. I say, no, it's not time for candy. She has a tantrum. It is uncomfortable to see a child super upset. And when they're older, it can be even worse, right? When they're 14, 15, 16, and slamming doors and running out of the house, right? It can be difficult to cope and manage through that. At the end of the day, we have to find our coping skills and our ability to stay with them as best we can. Validate what's valid, but not co-sign the behavior. Try to find ourselves in the sweet spot of authoritative parenting, where we combine warmth, a lot of love, a lot of nurturing, but with firm boundaries. Parents set clear expectations while remaining responsive and supportive. They encourage independence, promote healthy communication, and they provide consistent guidance. And that's for both parents. So role modeling is really, really important here. You can tell a kid something all you want. If you're not modeling it, then it's gonna go by the wayside. If you're telling a kid to get off technology, you need to get off technology, right? And there's some perceived hypocrisy that we can fight against, but at the end of the day, we do have to step up and live what we're telling them. So child-centered parenting is about really focusing on your children and their needs, right? Really making sure that at the end of the day, their needs are being addressed appropriately. Open and honest communication. Now listen, transparency and opacity is part of this. We can't tell our kids everything. We ought not to, right? Boundaries are important. But to the extent that we can be as transparent as possible, in a healthy way, that's good. And we remain opaque in other ways. And sometimes we even telegraph that. We say, hey, this is everything I can tell you. I'm going to tell you as much as I possibly can about any given topic. Because I want to trust you, especially as they're developing into independence and emerging adulthood. But we have to just be open about that. We have to be clear about that. So we're sort of transparent about the opacity. And then openness to discussing one's substance use and leaning into charges of hypocrisy. Young people say to me all the time, well, my parents drink a glass of wine. Why is that any different than me smoking cannabis? And you can say, well, there's a lot of reasons. One, your brain's not, 26 yet, right? You haven't fully formed. You're still in a very formative stage. It's different when a 40-year-old drinks a glass of wine, or maybe even uses a cannabis gummy, versus, say, a young person. So kids are very sensitive to hypocrisy. Can I get an amen? Yeah. So to that extent, right, it can be difficult for the parent in that moment to not be confident in their ability to say, it's different. It's different than I use a substance versus you use a substance. And I want you to grow up in a way so that you can make healthy choices about it. Effective co-parenting. I'm a child of divorce, so I like to bring that up because I think it's important. Co-parenting and being consistent is really important for all parents, especially those who are separated and divorced. So this includes consistent and frank discussions around boundaries, expectations, goals, and responsibilities. It's also about modeling respectful, appropriate, and warm communication, even when it's hard. It's about consistently spending time with children, including meal times and child-centered activities. This is really, really key. You gotta spend time with your kids. All right, emotional safety. And I just want to jump to the bottom really quick because I think this is important. You do not have to be perfect. You just have to be good enough. I think sometimes this talk in particular can be tough because parents will start to critically reflect on their own behaviors. You do not have to be perfect. You can make mistakes. In fact, sometimes making a mistake and apologizing is better than being perfect, right? Because it's really important to show and demonstrate the humility, right? Confidence and humility, they're two sides of the same coin. And developing in that kids is so important. So you can show that. So your child's ability to be open and honest with you as a parent is directly related to their belief that you will respond to them in a way that ensures emotional safety. So we meet our kids where they are. It's dependent on how we manage our own emotions, right? So it comes back to you. It comes back to how you deal with your stuff. So what are you doing to take care of yourself? Like really think about it, right? Are you spending time engaging in mindfulness, right? Are you doing exercises that help you? Are you having enjoyable times for yourself, right? Are you doing things that you need to do in order to step up and be there for your kids, right? And then in the moment, are you able to draw upon like a toolbox of skills that you can use to remain composed in this moment? it can be really, really tough. Yeah.
I think it's not just being good enough. I think it's just being there for them. It's not like good or bad. They walk in and they go, Mom, what? And like you're working, you're like, what? And then they're like, never, and they kind of go back. You're like, you know what? Let me not do the what in that attitude. It's like, what do you want?
Yeah.
And then they can come in, it's just be there. Not good enough, not bad enough, high achievers, whatever, just be there.
I love that. That presence is important, right? Yeah, no, I agree wholeheartedly. I still think they need to be good enough, but I agree that being present is so important.
You know, the reason why I say you don't have to be good enough is that they have to be able to relate that you can be broken, you can be busy, you can be apologetic, you're human.
That's fair, yeah. Our humanity is really important, right? And actually, I think that's a huge developmental milestone for kids at the age of your kids, right? Because for kids who are emerging into adulthood, right, it is really important to know that even being a flawed human, that's okay, right? I think sometimes there's a lot of black and white thinking that I'm either all good or I'm all bad. And I do agree that having some gray is really important.
Because the kids that are 9th, 10th grade, they're the kids that got caught in the COVID comeback. And those are the kids that we always have to like worry about, like how much are they getting of this because of lack of that.
Yeah.
So some of these kids are coddled a little bit, so we kind of don't want to coddle them. We're like, we want to kick you out 2 years.
No, I agree. That balance is really important. That's where the authoritative parenting is so important, right? Because it's love. It's like, I mean, you should tell your kid that you love them 1,000,000 times a day. And you can also set firm boundaries and let them know that, no, you're not doing that. I love you, and you're not doing that. You know? I mean, it's important. It is really key. And it is, I think, for certain generations, for certain groups of people, right, like the COVID generation that you talk about, who had that confusion, right, around it, it is really key to try to find that balance, for them to have confidence and humility, as one example. So thank you. I think that's very helpful. You can join me next time. All right, so here's some practical tips, and I know we're running low on time, so I want to be quick. I'm Italian, so I can speak fast. Active listening is like magic, right? Being able to say, what I think I hear you say is that right? Is enough to help a kid feel listened to. And even if you get it wrong, they'll correct you, right? But you want to really know what they're saying, but you also want to let them know that you really, really care about what they're saying. And so that's a great way of doing it. As a therapist, we do it all the time, but I always say, if more people spoke like therapists, maybe we'd have better communication. Validate with valids. I'll say it again, right? As a hashtag for the night. It's important to validate feelings and experiences while not necessarily endorsing behaviors, particularly those that are problematic, right? I think sometimes we think if we validate the feeling, we're somehow letting a kid off the hook in terms of the behavior. And you can say, that feeling was right on, angry. Yeah, you were angry. I'd be angry too. You can't punch a wall, right? So let's focus on other things we can do when we're angry. Don't interrupt. Oh, this is hard for me, right? Don't interrupt, right? I think I'm right all the time, right? There's a humility piece that we work on. Allowing someone to speak until they are done is a powerful way to encourage more communication and increase the likelihood that they'll allow you to reply. Also, just the use of silence, right? You can give nonverbal cues and allow a young person to continue to fill the space. That's really important. We want kids talking. The more expression, the better. All right. Talk when they're sober. Ensure that they are safe and follow up at a more appropriate time. If a kid comes home under the influence of drugs, right? Make sure they're safe, right? Somebody's got to take them to urgent care, somebody's taking them to the emergency room. Otherwise, make sure that they're safe. Wake up the next day, make some pancakes, have a conversation, right? Express and demonstrate love and support. They need to feel safe and supported even during difficult conversations. So express concern but avoid judgment. Let them know that your love is unconditional even if there are clear boundaries regarding what you will support behaviorally. Love is unconditional, but not necessarily what you do if they're behaving in a way that, as the kids say, is out of pocket. Give examples. Oftentimes, specific scenarios can provide clarity, so be sure to use I statements, and notice that your child's actions have caused harm or concern. It's okay to bring them into the idea that what they did was scary, that you were really scared and worried about them. And encourage additional support, right? So there's a body of evidence about the problem substance use can cause for adolescents and emerging adults, so focus on the benefits of additional support, right? You can focus on the negative, but also that getting more support, including peer support, can be really helpful. I promise no one will stop. All right, respond, don't react. Utilize your coping skills and your interpersonal effectiveness to respond thoughtfully and lovingly when faced with curiosity, right? Not even use, just like a kid's curious about use. We want kids to talk about it and ask about it, right? Even if you end up saying, no, that's not good, we don't do that. And thank you for letting me know you were curious. Thank you for trusting me with this thing that you might have thought I'd freak out, but actually I didn't freak out. Isn't that cool? I didn't freak out. Let's talk about it. But also, no, don't do it. The plan and call for help, I think, is really important. Letting a kid know that no matter what happens when they do, this goes beyond substance use. They're in the wrong place at the wrong time. If they're doing something wrong, if they get freaked out, they can call you, and whether you pick a car or an Uber or whatever, you will show up, you will provide love and support, you won't judge them, have the conversation the next day. Just make sure that they're safe, right? Kids freak out and they will not tell you, right? If they think that they're not going to be safe. Doesn't mean that there aren't going to be consequences, there can be consequences. But as long as they know that you love them and you'll support them, pick them up and tell them to reach out. All right, people, places, and things. So this is kind of my last slide, right? People. How well do we know the people in our child's lives? Including friends, romantic partners, and peers. Especially when those shift, right? When those relationships shift, we want to get more curious, right? Ideally, the new friend group are great too, but we want to know, right? There may be some challenges and some issues we want to be attuned to. How well do we know our kids, their interests, passions, and goals? And how well do we validate those interests? Sometimes kids like stuff and we don't know why. I used to love this music where everyone screamed and it was really loud, and my mother had to work really hard to be interested in the music I liked. It was not easy for her, but it was valuable for me to hear that she was interested in that, right? She wanted to know more about it, right? Didn't feel ashamed of the things that I liked. Places. How well do we know where our children hang out and where the party this weekend is located? This is really important, right? We always joke that, in certain circumstances, nothing good happens in Washington Square Park. I think I would sort of challenge that to some extent, but the spirit of the comment remains, right? Where are they hanging out and what are they doing, right? And that doesn't mean that they can't go there, but it means that it's important for you to know what's happening. Things. How well do we know our children's triggers, pain points, the words and experiences that cause them emotional dysregulation? Families, we know each other's buttons. We shouldn't push them, we should protect them. And it can be really hard if you're a parent and you're triggered, right? You might say something that's unhelpful. That's where our coping skills are really important. Understand what your kids' triggers are and do your best not to trigger them. All right, so that is my story and I'm sticking to it. I want to give space for Dr. Phillips, who's going to come in after me, but I really, really appreciate everyone's attention to this. Mr. K, are we going to save questions maybe for later?
Yes, that works.
I think that works out too. Well, listen, I really appreciate everyone. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. My name is Dr. Zoe Phillips. Really grateful to be here tonight. Thank you all for being here in person, and hello to everybody online. Tonight I'm going to be talking about navigating school avoidance. So if your child is avoiding or resisting going to school, what are some strategies you can use to navigate that situation and help them to reintegrate into the school setting? So just a little bit about me. I'm, first of all, a proud graduate of New York City Public Schools, so I always love being able to come back and talk to parents. My parents were once sitting where you are, so it's just a nice full circle moment. My background, I'm a school psychologist actually by training, and I've worked as a school psychologist and a behavior program specialist in a number of different school districts, but primarily Seattle Public Schools. And so really supporting kids around their social, emotional, and behavioral needs, consulting to teachers, and making sure that mental health resources are equitably accessible in our school settings as well. I've worked in hospital settings, the University of Washington Autism Center. I trained at the Department of Adolescent Medicine at Children's Hospital Los Angeles, so adolescence is one of my areas of expertise. I was the clinical director of a intensive summer treatment program for kids with neurodevelopmental disabilities, so I have knowledge and expertise in that area. And I also am now in private practice. I do a type of therapy called dialectical behavior therapy and also cognitive behavioral therapy, and I consult to nonprofit schools and organizations. My areas of expertise, a lot around mental health, so anxiety, depression. I do a lot of treatments for trauma and OCD, as well as relationship conflicts in couples and families and addiction recovery. And I also like to take a systems level approach to things as well. So I really like to focus on homeschool relationships and partnerships, school-based mental health. So how do we integrate mental health supports into our school system, not just individual therapy supports? Community-based trauma healing practices and culturally responsive practices. And so some of the writing that I'm doing right now and publishing is around equity in our schools and making sure that we don't abandon that in light of everything that's happening in our socio-political landscape right now. So that's just a little bit about me. We'll dive into our agenda though. Today we're going to talk a little bit about what is this problem of school avoidance, what are some of the factors that influence it, and what are some of the current trends that we're seeing. We're going to talk about the cycle of school avoidance, and even if your child is not avoiding school, some of these cycles that we can get stuck in are actually relevant to a number of different challenges that we can face. And so I urge you to pay attention even if your child eagerly wakes up, hops out of bed, and goes to school every single morning. We're going to dive into some strategies that you as parents can use to support your teen if they're experiencing these issues, and talk a little bit about like when to get some extra help if what you're doing at home is not quite enough. So what is school refusal or avoidance? They use a lot of different terms to talk about this, and so it can get a little confusing. We use truancy, but usually that's a much more punitive term that we use, and we take a very a legal approach to it. There's school anxiety, school phobia, emotionally based school avoidance, school refusal, chronic absenteeism, and depending on what we call it and how we define it, the numbers of how often this is happening has a very big range, everything from 1 to 5% to 22%. But what I'll say is, as a parent, you know if this is happening in your house. If your child is refusing to go to school, if they're cutting class, you know it when you see it. And what our numbers do show is that no matter what you call it, it rose during the pandemic and it hasn't gone back to where it was before. And so a lot of families, a lot of school professionals are struggling with this issue right now of how do we get our kids back to school. There's a lot of different factors that can influence here. There's the individual factors, and so we're thinking about mental health, anxiety, depression, trauma, OCD, other things that might require professional support from a therapist. Also things like high academic pressure, perfectionism, really wanting to achieve and do well, anxiety about social situations and those kinds of things can be happening at the individual level for the child. We have the school factors. What's going on? Is it a safe, welcoming, equitable school environment where your child feels loved and supported and validated by their peers, right? Is there bullying going on, social conflicts? Are they struggling academically? So there can be things happening from the school side as well that it can influence these patterns and cycles. If we zoom out even broader, right? Community, what's happening in your community, community violence, community stress, right? I work a lot with immigrant communities right now, and so there's a heightened level of stress about whether or not you and your family are documented, right? So those things are going to influence your child and your family as well, and potentially contribute to this. School funding structures, legislation around education and how we support our youth in schools all have an impact. I don't have 6 hours to talk about all of those things tonight, and I wish that I did, and if you want to continue the conversation, please reach out to me afterwards. Tonight we're going to focus on the family factors. Why? Because that is your sphere of influence as a parent, right? What can you control? Really, the only thing that's actually in your control, and I talk to my clients about this, no matter their age, is your own behavior and response to a situation. And that can be a hard thing to accept. But we're going to focus on what you as parents do have within your control, and also honor that you have a great influence over what happens in your teen's life, how they're behaving, what's happening in your household. You can also have an influence on the school, right, through your advocacy. And some parents choose to get involved right in a larger district level. You're here at the PTA influencing your school environment as well, and some folks I'm sure are advocating at the district, the state, the federal level as well, right? And there are some things that are out of our control. And we'll talk about this when we get to self-care too, about having compassion for yourself, that you can do everything right and still face challenges in your home and your family, and being able to accept yourself and the consequences of that can be difficult. So if you are experiencing difficulties with your teen or younger kids too around avoiding school, I'm gonna give you some general suggestions, honoring that I'm not your individual therapist, I don't know your individual situation. But these are some general guidelines that you might be able to use. The first is get involved right away. So don't wait for it to become a problem where your child hasn't been to school for months or weeks. Typically what we see is this cycle often doesn't break on its own. And so the earlier you intervene, the easier it's gonna be to break the cycle. So don't be afraid to get involved right away if your child is resisting going to school and seems to be wanting to avoid it. Start by gathering data on what's happening, really like non-judgmental stance. How often is your child missing school? When are they showing up late? What are their behaviors that they're engaging in to push back on that? How are you responding as parents and other family members? And again, no judgment. Are you upholding limits? Are you giving in and saying, okay, you can take a mental health day, or that's fine, you know, you can stay home from school today? Are you yelling, screaming? Are other members of the household doing that, right? Honestly, no judgment. Parenting is super hard. At this phase, just gathering data so that you understand the nature of the problem that you're facing. That's the only way we can intervene, is if we really understand what's happening. When is it likely to happen? Part of the reason we saw this go up during COVID is because after a period of not facing something that gives us stress, it becomes harder to face it. If I haven't given a talk in a couple years, I'm gonna feel rusty, my anxiety is gonna be higher. If you haven't been to school in a longer period of time, you're gonna have more anxiety going back to it. So it's just a natural function of how anxiety works, which we'll talk about. So sometimes we see school resistance go up after a vacation, a long weekend, right after summer break. Thinking about what contextual factors might be happening, what's going on in the school, what's going on broader in the community, what other stressors might be happening in your child's life. And then really we're gonna hone in today on what is the function of avoidance. So just from a behavioral standpoint, every behavior that we engage in that repeats over time serves a function, whether it's showing up to work because you get paid or you love your job or some combination of both, right? Eating chocolate cake, using drugs and alcohol, screaming at people. Every single behavior that occurs and reoccurs over time serves some function. And we need to understand the function if we want to change the behavior, okay? And many of these things are unconscious. They're not happening, sorry, I can only think in Spanish for through our own volition. Okay, so understanding the function of behavior. There's three kind of primary functions that we think about when we think about school avoidance and what might be happening. The first is escape or avoidance, right? So staying home is an escape from facing anxiety, facing social pressure, facing academic pressure, feelings of shame or inadequacy that might come up when people are facing their peers, right? So, and we're going to talk a lot about this cycle of escape and avoidance. Attention, so maybe they're getting positive attention or any kind of neutral attention from you at home as parents or caregivers or siblings, right? And again, this is not to say that attention is bad. It just becomes problematic if your child is getting attention in a way that is linked to them not going to school. What we want is for them to get your attention and love and quality time and also attend school. So that's when it becomes problematic, if we start to see that those two things are linked together and might be keeping this pattern in place. And peer attention, right? If they're outside of the house, this might be engaging with other peer groups or older peers who are not, not in school anymore, not attending school, they might be getting attention, or if they're engaging in social media and gaming and those kinds of things. And finally, rewards. So access to things that they like, TV, phone time, video time, social media, pornography, online pornography has been skyrocketing and been creating these behavioral addictions that are really hard to break. Parents often are not aware of it and feel very out of control of it. So, and that can make the pattern much harder to break if your child is engaging in something that is activating those reward centers in their brain. That is going to be so much more reinforcing than school. So we need to kind of keep that in mind as well. What are they doing when they're out of school? So the cycle of anxiety and avoidance, right? Something prompts anxiety, and this is not just clinical anxiety. This is for every single human being in this room and on the earth. We can experience anxiety. I feel anxiety about getting up and talking in front of people. You might feel anxiety about going to a work meeting. Your child might feel anxiety about going to school, right? And so when we feel anxiety, something prompts it. Our distress goes up. Maybe we're sweating, our heart rate goes up a little bit, we feel like a little nervous, our stomach hurts, maybe we get a headache. And if those feelings are high enough, we want to avoid the thing that is causing that distress in our body. So natural. We want to avoid it. Get me out of here. This doesn't feel good, right? So I call in sick and I say, actually, like, I'm gonna bow out. I actually can't do this talk. Or you say, I can't make that work meeting. I'm so sorry. Or your child says, ooh, I got a fever and a stomach ache and I really have to stay home from school, right? Avoidance in the short term relieves our anxiety. Oh, I feel so much better in the short term. In the long term, does it help? No, it makes it worse, right? Actually, our anxiety grows over time, and so sometimes we can get stuck in this cycle, which is why I'm not actually a proponent of like mental health days to stay home, because actually staying home can make your mental health worse sometimes. Okay, so just kind of keeping that in mind. Similar cycle of depression. This doesn't necessarily mean clinical depression, just feeling down in the dumps. We have low energy, low motivation. We want to avoid any kind of activity, whether that's putting on pants and leaving the house, or going to school, seeing other people, exercising, right? Our energy is really low. We want to avoid those things. As we avoid those things, it makes our energy worse, right? And so avoiding the things that we don't want to do actually creates this cycle and can lead to lower self-esteem, feelings of disconnection. If we add into that also substance use or other behavioral addictions, which are often functions, they often function to avoid uncomfortable feelings, right? You have a drink, my anxiety goes down. Woo, that feels good, right? So teens also are using drugs and alcohol for a reason, right? It functions to help them in some way, often to avoid something uncomfortable. And yet we get stuck in this cycle where in the short term it helps, and in the long term it keeps us stuck, okay? So that's our assessment phase, right? We're trying to gather data on what's happening. Think about what might be the function of this behavior, right? Generate some hypotheses and ideas. And we also want to open the dialogue with our teens and ask them for their perspective. They are an incredibly valuable source of information about what's happening as we assess what's happening. Mr. Golia did such a great job of talking about validation and opening these conversations, so I'm going to go through this part a little bit more quickly. But really, we want to express concern and a desire to support as a team member, right? Finding common goals with your teen, rather than coming in and saying you're being irresponsible, you're being lazy, this problem has to stop. Really trying to come in with an open mind, with curiosity. I care about you. You haven't been to school 10 days in the past month. I'm really worried. I want to help you. Help me understand what's going on here. And you can model vulnerability, whether it's sharing about your own struggles with facing things that you're nervous about, or about not being great at having these conversations. That's modeling vulnerability too. Listen, the last couple times I've tried to talk to you about this, I just yelled at you. And I'm working on that. I'm sorry. I actually really want to listen to you now, right? So modeling that vulnerability. Validating feelings, we can also validate urges. So I'll give you this example. My 6-year-old niece, she's on the playground, somebody calls her stupid, she socks them in the face. What can you validate? The feeling. Totally makes sense you felt angry if somebody called you stupid. What else can you validate? The urge. When I feel angry, most humans have a biological urge to protect or attack. So you can validate. It makes sense actually that you wanted to defend yourself and that you wanted to punch him. Totally normal. Nothing wrong with that. You do have a timeout because it's not okay to hit people. And we want to express encouragement at the end. I know that you can regulate your anger. I really do. I know you can control your body. I have faith in you. I know this is hard, right? So what might this sound like developmentally appropriate with teens? around school avoidance. I see that you are really anxious about going to school, and it makes sense. There's been a lot of social pressure. You've been getting bullied on social media, and midterms are coming up. I totally get why you feel stressed. And it makes sense that you would want to stay home because it's really hard to face all those things. I have that same urge when I'm like facing the pressure at work. I really just want to call in sick. All right, and you still have to go to school. We need to figure out together a way to get you back to school. I know this is important to you. I know you want to be XYZ one day. You want to graduate, right? How can we work on this together? I believe in you, and I'm here to support you, right? And then we got to set those limits. So when it comes to school refusal, I encourage you to have a clear, consistent plan or list of reasons why kids can stay home. You can consult your family doctor. I love having a document that's like a family contract. It makes it so not personal. Did you have a fever of 99.9 in the past or greater in the past 24 hours? No. Oh, I'm so sorry I didn't meet that criteria. Did you vomit non-self-induced in the past 24 hours? Right? Like really specific, super medical, really boring, nobody can argue with it, right? And have everybody in the family on the same page. It's not a power struggle. This is our family contract, right? You don't meet the criteria, so sorry, no, you want to stay home. I'll see you at 3:30, right? So having a clear, consistent plan, it's written out, it is introduced to all caregivers, grandparents, abuelas, tias, everybody who might be involved. Doesn't matter if you're in the same household, different household, I don't care, right? Everybody is on the same page. We are a team. We know what the criteria is. Present it to your team, not at 7:30 in the morning when you're screaming at them to get out of bed and get on the bus because they're going to be late to school, right? In advance when everyone's calm. This is our new family plan. This is what we're going to abide by. And then make home boring. If you really cannot get your child out of the house, listen, 14, 15, 16-year-old, you cannot carry them to school. Sometimes you actually cannot force them. But make sure that home is more boring than school, which is really hard, right? School is boring. So that means no phones, no video games, no nothing, right? Like no extra sleeping, no, right, door is open, we are monitoring your activities. If you are not legitimately sick as per our family contract, you will have schoolwork that is sent home that you are expected to complete, right? So I really advocate that parents tighten up. Teens need limits. They hate them, they push back on them, and they also love them, right? They need them. They need those parameters to bump up against and to be held and supported and know that you're not gonna just give in, right? That's very containing for teens and all kids, okay? So make home boring, communicate, and then prepare in advance. Know your own triggers, why you give in, right? Your own stress, your own anxiety, your own concern about your child's anxiety and what's actually happening at school. So have a plan ahead of time to take care of yourself and ride it out because it is always darkest before the dawn. If you are trying to break a behavior habit, whether it's your own or somebody else's, it gets worse before it gets better. So prepare for that. Remind yourself of your long-term goals and attend to your own health and well-being, right? Validate yourself. Changing behavior patterns in ourselves, let alone in somebody else, is incredibly hard, right? So practice that self-compassion, recognize your own sources of stress, engage in that self-care, whether it's relaxation, getting your own support, talking to people who are not under the age of 18, right, and outside of your family, talking to other adults, making sure you're taking care of yourself, maintaining your physical well-being, and practicing that letting go of control. Whatever that is for you, where it is so hard, right, because this is your child, this is your flesh and blood, and you care about them and love them so deeply, and you're worried about their future. How do you let go in those moments and practice saying to yourself, I did the best that I could, I showed up today, I was a good parent, it didn't turn out how I hoped, and that's okay. Tomorrow's a new day, I can keep going, right? So staying strong. Support motivation, and we don't just want to set limits and make things boring, we also want to motivate kids to go to school. So what are those connections? What are those goals? What are those activities, right? How can we partner with the school so that school is actually a place where your child has some motivation to go, to feel connected, to feel invigorated, to feel challenged, right? And reinforcing progress. Meet them where they're at and reinforce progress over time. It's not going to happen overnight if your child is not attending school at all. Technology and activities can be used, devices can be used as currency. It is the most powerful currency in any household. Technology is not a God-given human right, and for those of us who grew up before we had unlimited access to technology, I was one of 6. We had 30 minutes of television, and we all had to decide collectively on what that television show was. And my parents lied to us and said we didn't have cable until I was like 17. So right, like it's not. It is now so expected that teens have access, unlimited access. It doesn't have to be that way. So you can set limits, and technology and devices can be used as a currency for doing your job, which is going to school, doing your chores, and completing your homework, right? Avoid over-reinforcing, and I'm just gonna say, like, if you find yourself having to pay your child to go to school, or you really feel like you're bribing your child and it doesn't feel congruent with your values as a parent, that might be a time to seek out professional help. Other times to seek professional help, if these self-help strategies and partnership with the school isn't effective to change this problem, or if your teen is really showing signs of significant mental health challenges, that might be another time. Or if it's just really affecting you and your family, that's another time to reach out for support. A couple treatment options, and I know I have like 1 minute left, so I'm wrapping it up. Cognitive behavioral therapy, dialectical behavioral therapy, and social skills training. These are the 3 that are supported by research and evidence if your child is experiencing school refusal. So I encourage you to look for a provider who provides evidence-based practices. It should involve you, it should involve the school, and it should not just be you sending your child into a room and not knowing what happens for 45 minutes every week. That's not evidence-based practices when it comes to school refusal. If you're interested, come up to me after or send me a message. My information will be here. Starting in the first week in April, I am doing an 8-week virtual parent group. We have 2 time slots available, 1 during the day, 1 in the evening. We have spots available. Sliding scale fee is available too, so if finances are an issue, please don't hesitate to reach out. This is caregiver skills, so it's around communication, setting limits, regulating your own emotions, and we do have a couple slots available in both of our groups, so if you're interested, please reach out. Here's my info. And I'm also working around immigrant rights and running a fundraiser coming up soon with the Latin American Relief Foundation. So if that's something that you're passionate about and you want to get involved, that's another thing. Feel free to reach out. I'm happy to connect in service of our greater community. So thanks so much. Back one slide, yes. Oh yeah, any questions? And I will be here afterwards too, so yeah. No. Yeah, absolutely. This one, yeah. Yes.
This may be a tangential question, but it's a very Brooklyn type question regarding school avoidance. Sometimes my kid just wants to stay home from school so she can catch up on work. And what happens is that she ends up missing a day and then she has more work to catch up on, so it's kind of a vicious cycle.
Yeah.
So objectively, we look at her workload and we think, wow, this is an awful lot of work. And we urge her to go negotiate with her teachers, explain the situation, but she's very reluctant to do so.
Right.
She would rather just not hand stuff in and then eventually get it into the teacher and assume it will be accepted at that point in time. I mean, should we step in and intervene and write to the teacher ourselves at that point, or should we leave it up to her?
Yeah, fantastic question. This question is around like when to intervene as parents and when to encourage your child to advocate for themselves. I would say first step, I would always try to get your teen to advocate for themselves and actually teach them the skills. It takes longer, but like teach them the skills of how to do it, walk them through it. If they're willing, role play with them, right? Get them prepared. Let them know that kind of this like scaffolding and like helping them get there. And if that is not working, offer to do it with them, right? Maybe you can talk with them, but have them kind of like do the talking and you're there to support. I would say last resort, intervening just as a parent, right? At this developmental age, you're really trying to support that independence and that ability to advocate for themselves. It is tricky though. Yeah, great question.
I have a question about the objective
Yeah.
One of my kids has migraines, so it's less, like, I basically have to take his word, right? He has migraines. But there is a cycle of stress avoidance, migraine gets triggered, and, so there is no real objective measure that I can use. Do you have any advice or?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that's a tricky one. I would actually talk to your doctor, the family doctor, about that if you have access to one.
So in that case, we did, and,
Yeah.
and that's where the issue of avoidance came up, because it was one of those things where, yes, the kid gets migraines, but sometimes he also understands that this is a tool that I can use to avoid.
Yes. In those instances, sometimes what I lean into is not questioning whether or not it's true, but leaning into reinforcing the behavior I want to see. Right? And so then they're doing the cost benefit analysis. Well, I get no screen time because you have a migraine. You are clearly not looking at screens. That will exacerbate your migraine. But like, you could read a book, or you could sit on the couch and listen to music, you know, but like, making it really boring at home.
So, but the problem
Yeah.
in this case, though, is that all those other things will work, all the other make boring, but
Yeah.
if you have migraine, you do get to sleep.
That's a tricky
That is
one.
a big way to work.
That is a really tricky one. Ooh. I don't have a silver bullet answer. I wish that I did. I will think about this though. Take down my information, email me, and I'll sleep on this and I'll get back to you. It's a fantastic question. Yeah.
I'm gonna use that. I'm gonna use the migraine excuse.
No, it's bad, because when he really has it really bad, it's terrible.
Yeah.
Basically, I have to take his word.
Yeah. And I think, right, like having flexibility and gentleness, I think if it's becoming a pattern, right, like 1 or 2 times, that's where it's like, okay, you need to intervene. If it really is becoming a pattern, I would also just like have an honest conversation with him and say like, listen, I'm gonna call this out. Like, I love you, I care about you, I don't wanna force you to go to school with a migraine, but like, also I don't want you to just like lie to me about it and sleep, you know? And kind of highlight the pros and cons for him too, you know? Like, this is my fear that if this becomes a pattern, this is what's gonna happen. And I don't wanna endorse that because I love and care about you and I care about your future. And so I'm gonna push you, and I need us to have an agreement that you trust me enough that you can tell me if you really are, you know, like building that trust in the relationship too, which I'm sure you're already doing. Yeah.
I'll say that this is Brooklyn Tech, right? I went here 30 years ago, and we never had insurance problems. I don't think there's this. Now, I don't know, because maybe our kids are raised differently now, so we have to realize the audience we talk to. This is not an inner city school in Los Angeles or other parts of Brooklyn or the Bronx. This is a specialized high school. So I know what you're saying is important. I don't know.
I went to the same school.
Depends on what crowd you were in around like 30 years ago. One of you was in Washington Square Park and the other one was in the library.
Yeah, what's the question?
My dad's a psychiatrist. I'm crazy, so is my dad. But my kids love school. They don't have a problem with this. They don't have kids with like trauma.
No, I will say it is changing. It is changing, absolutely. And I think one of the things, the difficulty is that, you know, there's a measurement issue here, right? Like, how do we measure it? But there definitely are more kids who are refusing to go to school. I think there's a cultural aspect of it too. There are more kids right now who are pushing back on the authority of parents in general. And that is really challenging. I think there's a role of social media modeling that's happening right now. But I
Modeling gentle parenting.
gentle parenting. I won't say anything publicly about my feelings about it. But I think there's beautiful things, right? We went from an era where parents were super, super strict and maybe not super warm and loving, and a lot of parents, I think, swung in the opposite direction for really good, valid reasons, right?
Authoritarian, permissive.
Exactly. And I don't know, do you want to add anything about this, the trends you're seeing?
Yes. So it's funny, right? Whatever the language we use, right? But the idea that we have high warmth but high boundaries and accountability is the sweet spot. And so it's funny because just from like a semantic perspective, that's gentle parenting is not permissive parenting. Gentle parenting is actually the authoritative parenting. They're just synonyms. But I agree that at the end of the day, right? Holding up boundaries, accountability, and expectations is really key for parents, right? And even thinking about like the invisible illnesses, right? Like migraines or like a GI issue, right? Some of that too is also about like the values that we try to instill. Now when I went to therapist school, they were like, well, you don't talk about like morals and values, right? But in fact, as like parents, but also to some extent as therapists, if we're not like focusing to some extent on a foundation of values, then like what are we doing, right? And then it's very like sort of amoral, right? And that way it's not really helping folks. I think like when we think about like how we treat emerging adults, right? 16 to 26-year-olds, part of it isn't just like behaviors and feelings and thoughts, it's also about like their virtues, right? And part of that is honesty and discipline and all of the things that we want to help develop. So I think sometimes it's also those honest conversations have a foundation of, I'm going to treat you developmentally appropriately and also challenge you to grow into the person that like I think you want to be and that I want to be. And so that's where it goes beyond just those kind of basics of thoughts, feelings, and actions and into something higher. And I think whether it's in substance use recovery, whether it's in the work around DBT and CBT, at the foundation of this, we're trying to help people become better people, right? I'm doing the best I can and I can do better, and that's also challenging their heart. And so I think all of these conversations are about like, okay, so you're struggling with migraines, and I get it, and like in so many ways, I can't understand exactly what you're going through, but also I'm going to count on you to be honest and open with me. And like and see if you can create that challenge. I think that's because I think a lot of kids respond to that well.
I have a question, and I don't know if that's a question to you or to Mr. K, but it's something that you had mentioned about how kids shouldn't be afraid to, you know, when they put themselves in a bad position to reach out to you. I'm more concerned with when their friends, when they're with their friends and they get in trouble because of something that like their friends did. So they're out and about and they have a friend who took the drinking a little too far, and now that friend is, you know, face flat on the ground. The kids need to be able to be aware that, you know, they can call, my kid knows she can call me, but
They can also call 911 because there's a Good Samaritan law that's passed statewide that says that if there's an issue with substance use in particular, you can call 911, and even if you've been involved, they won't arrest you for that. Now there's some limits to this, and I'm not a lawyer, I'm a social
but then
worker.
you have NYPD bringing your friend home, and I don't think anybody wants that.
No, I agree. No, well, except to the extent that there's real danger happening, right? So if somebody is actually at risk of dying, right, then we have to really think about that. That being said, right, the idea of like what they should do, we want to instill in young people the sense of responsibility, right, to their peers. In fact, one thing we talk about is like how open are young people into like calling out their friends when they're engaging in inappropriate behaviors. And I think that's and that's a ideal that we're working towards. But the operating principle is like, how are we as parents or how are educators giving young people the tools, but also the context to like make better choices in that way. And that can be really difficult. Sometimes you have to call out your friends and say, hey, if not in the moment, the next day to be like, what you did was really not cool. And like, we want to hang out with you, we want to have fun, but you took it too far. And how can we as friends support you, but also how can we enlist adults and other people to support that?
They just laugh at that person behind that person's back because they're teenagers. That's what they do.
Yeah, and I would just say, right, that like if we were, but like I think that's why we have to keep working, right? That's why we have to keep doing that work, right? If we accept the status quo, then we have to throw our hands up in the air, right? But all of us are here for a reason, right? And the reason we're here in large part is because we believe that like we can put our heads together and figure out how to make this generation better than the one before and so on, and deal with some of those challenges. So I agree, like it's daunting. And I don't have rose-colored glasses, right? We see this stuff all the time, and you know, I'm sure you see it too, right? I think the idea is that what can we do to build resources, community support and intervention to help young people like be the young people that we really want them to be, right?
The thing that I've been noticing is they seem to have the, well, it's not me, so it's not my problem mentality.
I think that can get exacerbated too when they're decision making around their peers rather than around a responsible adult. So one thing I will say, just a caution about like, I'm a little more hesitant to call 911, especially around issues of race, and you know we're not sure how the police are going to respond, et cetera, especially if I'm not sure if folks are documented or not, you know, it's like, it can be a risky thing. So I would say one of the things that I am an advocate for is sitting down one-on-one with your team and tapping into that softer part of them that you know probably existed before they turned 13 that doesn't come out around their friends, and talking about a plan for if your friend is in trouble, right? If your friend is in trouble, like these are safe things that you can do to advocate for that person, and asking them and really normalizing, like it's actually hard to do this in front of your friends. And so it's really validating that for them, being able to stand up and kind of like do the right thing. There's a lot of social pressure to not do that in those moments, but having them have a plan that they have a picture of on their phone that they can talk to you about collaboratively of like safe numbers that they can call, and who can be like a safe adult contact in the community during those times. Is that it? Yeah.
One last question.
Any other questions? Well, thank you all so much for your time.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you both so much, and thank you, Mr. K, for bringing them here. I think everybody here, there was a lot of information. All right, if we don't have any other questions, actually, we do need to get out of here, so we're gonna take no more questions. I need a motion to, I'm sorry, well, I'll meet you after. I need a motion to adjourn. I've got a lot of those in seconds. Thank you all for coming.